Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me in episode 68 of AppScan Tuesdays. And following the great video that we had last week, I asked Ravi to join again because we had a few more topics that we wanted to cover with AppScan Enterprise. So, Ravi, without spending too much time, let me bring you in.
Hey, Aidan, good morning.
Good morning to you. Thank you very much for
Yeah,
joining again and for this demo. Last week we talked about how to do the folder structure. As we said, it wasn't a best. Well, there wasn't any good or bad folder structure. It needs to fit what the organization had, and you showed us some best practices. If
that's
you
right.
didn't catch the video last week, so it's over there over Ravi's head. I'll include a link. Today, what are we going to talk about today, Ravi?
Yeah, so today what we'll see is about how do you import findings from external sources because invariably an organization might not be just using one tool for either the
Mm-hmm.
automated security tests or they might be integrating with other third parties for finding issues, which then just goes around in an email or is there an other artifacts like a Word document or an Excel. So it's kind of spread out, right? But
Mm-hmm.
then with AppScan Enterprise, since it's enterprise wide, and at certain level, you might want to see the security positioning as it is, as opposed to from specific AppScan tool versus managing it in another tool or other external resources. So how do we get all this together and collate it and put it inside AppScan Enterprise? That's what we would be looking at.
So basically, an option for the person that runs the application security program to see the results as they come from different scanners, not just those
Right.
that are baked in with AppScan Enterprise for DAST and IAST, anything that we run in the cloud or AppScan Source or, as
Right.
you said, third-party
Yeah.
scanners.
That's a good point because it's not just about the AppScan suite of products. It's not necessarily this findings are coming from AppScan product itself, but we also get the data from other third-party scanners and even from some of our competitors, if we can put it that
Yeah.
way.
Well,
So yeah,
we
yeah,
want
the whole
everyone to
whole
use
philosophy.
our tools, but we do expect that they may use something else. So,
Right. So it invariably it happens in an organization where you have different say, business units and they might have historically used
yeah.
other tools which they don't want to move out. But then now you have the whole lot of data sitting across in silos. So you can bring them together because at a management level, perhaps they don't want to look at different areas and try to figure out what's happening, right? It makes more sense to
Yeah.
have it in a consolidated place. Yeah.
And they want that single pane of glass. And actually, we also can import results that are not from application security testing from other security testing platforms.
That's
So,
true. That's true.
as we have a lot to show, I'll try to be
Yeah.
quiet this time, and let's jump right to the demo.
Okay, so let's get started. We'll quickly start by creating an application into which we are going to be importing issues from different sources. Let me create a demo application. We will not change any of the attributes. We'll just save it as it is. So the way we can import issues from other applications or scanner is by selecting on the option that we have. So once we have opened the application, we select the option here which says import issues. And then you can see this is empty right now because for this particular application, we have not imported any issue from any other third-party scanners as of now. So when we click on create new is when we are provided with a list of the third-party scanners or external scanners that are supported. uh, as you can see here on the top, we have the AppScan suite of products itself. Out of the box, they are supported. So what you're seeing are the scanners, majority of them from ASOC. If you run scans in ASOC, once you export the results, you can then or export the issues you can then import them into AppScan Enterprise for scanning. So apart from the AppScan suite of products, you also have other sources like the Black Duck, Burp Suite, we have Cigital 45, Web Inspect, Secure Assist. So you have a plethora of scanners from which the data can be imported into AppScan Enterprise, right? So quickly, let's see the import of issues from, let's say, the supported scanner, which is, let's start with AppScan Source. What's the procedure for doing that, right? So once we select AppScan Source, since AppScan Source exports the data as in OZ ASMT file format, it prompts for that. So let's go to Source. Let's select one of the files and let's select import. As you can see, there's a warning that pops up which says it's configured to remove orphaned issues. We will see how this configuration is implemented while creation of the scanner itself. So for now, we'll just say OK and let it import the issues. And we'll be shown the progress of how the issues are imported into AppScan Enterprise. So once the issues are imported, we also get a link to the log file, which shows the summary of what actually went on. So as you can see, it gives a view of what's the steps that happened and also a few messages. In this case, since the scanner is configured to ignore informational findings, that's what this is reporting during the import. It ignored the informational findings. And in the end, we get a summary of how many items were actually created, what was updated, what was removed, and how many issues were skipped. We'll close that. And as you can see, we have the list of issues that are imported. So as you can see here, there are different groupings that we have. So normally what happens is the grouping is done on the basis of the severity. But since we are going to be importing issues from different sources, just to differentiate them easily, I've chosen the option to group them as scanner. So as of now, as you can see, it will list all the issues that is imported from AppScan source. Now, similarly, now this is for the tools that's part of the AppScan suite of products. So we could similarly import it for, let's say, AppScan Standard if we have files from AppScan Standard or even from IAST, which got released a couple of releases back. Let's see how do we import it for a third-party scanner that's not as part of AppScan. So we'll choose Burp Suite here. Uh, so let's go to Burp Suite. We have an XML file which is actually exported from Burp Suite. We'll import that now. So if you notice this time we did not get the message regarding the orphaned issues. That's because the way this particular scanner is configured, we also include the orphaned issues. Now, since that was quick, let's quickly see what happened. And as you can see, there are quite less number of issues, so it got done quite fast. None of the issues were, there are no warnings or errors, so that means we're good. Now, if you go back, as you can see, you can now see issues from Pursuit. So one way is to group the issues based on the scanner. Another option is to actually choose. Now, this is not enabled by default, but we can go and choose columns and we can choose the column which says scanner. If we do that, once the issues are imported, we can also see what's the source of that issue, right? So as you can see, the scanner name also is presented as part of this, right? Now, these are the out-of-the-box support for external scanners, right? But many a times what happens is that the customer could also be engaging, let's say, a third-party penetration testing team, which could be manual penetration testing, or within the organization itself, there could be teams which perform manual penetration testing. And these reports may be stored in different formats, in the Word format, in perhaps Excel, or say they create a PDF report and send it out. And let's say we want to also track those issues. So what options do we have in that case? In that case, there are a couple of ways to get them into AppScan Enterprise, and that's done by using the option of either creating a generic scanner. This is one way of doing it, or another way is to create a custom scanner, and we'll see how each of them is actually done. Okay, so as of now, we'll choose the generic. Let's see what's given to us by default. So let's choose the generic scanner. And as you can see, the input that's needed for a generic scanner is a CSV file, right? So since I already have created the CSV file, and to just show the flow of what happened, I'll just select this, and I'll just select this option, and let's say import. Okay, and again, you see the message about orphaned issues. In a minute, we'll see when this message comes and when it doesn't come. Okay, so this also got done quite fast, and we have an issue summary here. Let's open it and see. So it says few of the columns do not correspond to any attribute in the profile and will be ignored, and it tells about what are uh, those fields and why they are ignored, right? So it talks about classification, and then it also talks about a specific field called classification where the value is high. So we'll see why this has also come. But though these are just warnings, we can see that it's imported the issues, and 18 issues are imported. So let's go back and see what actually happened. So we can see it's imported and there are some values here. So basically what happens is some of the fields that are there, for example, something like a status, right? Or like we saw, it was complaining about classification, though we have not added it. So let's quickly add classification to this bunch and see what happens. Right, so now we also have the classification. As you can see, there are certain fields here. So some of these fields have defined values, which is expected to be as it is from an options. User cannot enter their own values. So what we saw about the warning about the classification field is that whatever field we have entered and mapped to classification, we may have had values, which is not something that's supported by default within AppScan Enterprise, and hence they will not be imported is what it says. So if we go to generic now, which is what we imported, the field for classification by default, it is specified as definitive. It defaults to one of the values. Okay, so now let's see what's the mapping or how it's done, what happens in the background. So for that, let's go back quickly to the portfolio tab. And then in the portfolio tab, we have this option for additional options. And here we have one option which says edit scanner profile template. Let's choose that. And when we come here, we would see all the scanners are listed here, including the one which we imported last, which was the generic scanner. And alongside each of these scanner, as you can see, is an option which says remove orphaned issue. So if this option is selected, that's when you see the warning message that the orphaned issues would not be imported. If it's not selected, it would just go ahead and import without the warning. Now, if you want to see what are the fields and what is the mapping that's done for the generic field, let's just select this. We can edit it. And as you can see, by default, we just have three options for generic field. The rest of them have been adding it for the purpose of this demo. So these are additionally added fields. As you can see, I've added a field called classification, but when we open the CSV file, we'll be able to see that it doesn't have the matching data that was being expected. So I've added these fields. Now quickly, let's open uh, the CSV file to see what's there. As you can see, I have few fields here, and this is what has happened. So for classification, I have entered value. It doesn't actually expect these value. What it expects is to be either definitive and values like that. And this is actually severity. So I may have wrongly mapped it, and that's why you see the error message. So sometimes it becomes a bit of trial and error before you get the fields right. So it's very important to make sure that whatever fields are getting imported is what you want in those specific fields. So let me quickly close this. So this is for the generic profile. Now let's say we don't want to use the generic profile, and let's say my penetration testing team finds issues and fields that do not correspond, or I do not want to touch the generic profile since it's used by other teams as well. What we could do is we could actually create our own custom, let me call it demo scanner, right? And issues from internal pen testing team, right? And I'll not choose the option for orphaned issues. Now, if I try to save this, I'll get an error which states that there are no attribute mapping that were defined. The reason is because I have not yet added the fields that need to be created. It's just an empty scanner. So what we need to do is we'll select edit, and now I need to add the fields for which I need to do the mapping, right? So let me again create the fields which maps to what was there in the CSV file already in the generic. So I'll create a field called ID, and which maps to something like an external ID because I have that field there, right? And I'll call this as unique. I can add a value which is a description, which maps to the description field within the CSV file. I'll add a value for severity. So if you saw, the severity field was expecting a specific value which we had wrongly mapped as classification. So let's now map it to the field called classification here. And let's say I want to add a domain, and I'll choose the option of domain here. And anything else, let me add a path. So we can give any field as long as it maps to the value in uh, the CSV file. It's not necessary to have it in the same value. What's important is from a case sensitivity perspective, it's always better to keep it consistent with what's there in the CSV file, but it's not mandatory. And again, even these fields, as you can see, I've mapped the severity to a classification, right? So it's just possible we need to be conscious about what we are importing. And let me just now save this. Okay, so it's now adding those values back to the database and mapping and confirming if there are any additional fields or not. So this can take a bit of time because this is creation of a new custom scanner itself. Now that it's done, I will go into the demo application, and this time I will import issues, and I will use the custom demo scanner that we just now created. And as you can see, when I hover over it, I would be shown the description of what we entered while creation of this particular scanner. So since there's an overlap of the issues field with the generic issues, I'll reuse the same generic issues CSV file. As you can see, we're given a message which says the import completed with warnings. Let's see what the warnings are. So as you can see, the following columns of the CSV file do not correspond to attributes in the scanner profile and will be ignored. So these exist in the scanner profile, but not as part of the CSV file. So these will be ignored, but the rest of the issues will be imported. So let's close it. And now if you go, you can see that our custom scanner also has these issues. And that's it.
Okay, now we're back. Thanks, Ravi. This was a very educational video for me, seeing all the different options and the ability to create the custom scanners and change them. I can't say I'm too excited to see some of our competitors there, but as you mentioned, big companies may have different business units, may use different tools, may use AppScan, may use some other not so great tools or okay tool. Um, so, any comments, any last thoughts about this topic?
Right. I mean, the whole idea is once you have all the data in the single data store, we can then further process it together in terms of triaging or even pushing it into defect management system.
Hmm.
That's a topic we could do at some point of time, which is from AppScan Enterprise. How do we push it into other tools like the Rational Team Concert or Jira? How these issues can be then managed by the development team.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's always good to have it in a single repository as opposed to distributed manner.
I think I might have actually recorded the video. I will check if I did. I'll include the link again over your head with
Okay,
the
that's
AppScan
great.
Issue Gateway. If not, again, yeah, we should do that. So, Ravi, thank you very much for showing how we can use AppScan Enterprise to manage your application security program and not just running scans, because running scan is just one piece of the puzzle.
Very true.
Thank you very much. Until next
Sure.
time.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye bye,
See you.
Ravi.
Bye for now. Bye for now.